forget that. So thank you. Yes, we are going to record this for those unable to attend. And so we're just going to get started by any tips on communicating to donors, in addition to the flyer that I provided that was meant for donor communication. So any tips or questions from anyone? This is your opportunity.
I don't really have a question about the letters, but I do want to find out about Colorado Gives. If we have somebody that, I mean, we have several donors that give at Colorado Gives Day. We cannot give them enterprise zones? Is that correct?
So with this tax credit, the homeless contribution income tax credit, no, Colorado Gives would not qualify. It's considered an intermediary organization. So the way the Department of Revenue looks at it is that there is a change in hands of who owns that money. Basically, it goes from the donor to Colorado Gives to you as the organization. And the enterprise zone, they had a particular portion of their statute that allowed for intermediary organizations like Colorado Gives. And so that's how they were allowed to accept those gifts. And so, yeah, that would be something that would need to be brought forward as an amendment next year if that's something that you all would want to change. And yeah, I agree that that's another piece to think about for this year, the communication piece. If you have people who usually donate through Colorado Gives, trying to communicate that change to them and hopefully not lose their donations. I don't know if anyone has thought about that piece yet, but that's a good point.
Brian, does that apply then through any other third party, like Mile High United Way? We have donors who give through them as well and designate to us, or workplace giving programs, obviously, any of that sounds like it doesn't qualify.
That's correct on the Mile High United Way. That's considered a intermediary organization. Workplace giving, I might have to research that and get back to you. Is that where you're talking about where it's a recurring donation that pulls from their paycheck?
Yeah, but usually that's processed by a third party like Benevity or something. And I think folks can designate like the child care tax credit and through those programs. I don't remember if they ever were able to do DEZ for those types of things.
Okay. I will double check on that, but that sounds a bit different if it's just because I understand Benevity is a software platform and not an organization, like a separate 501c3. So I think that would be different, but I'll double check.
And Brianne, this is the similar question. This has to do with community shares. So that's definitely workplace giving. We've been an enterprise zone program for a long time. And if people gave a certain amount, they were able to take the enterprise zone credit through that process in the past. So it's the same kind of question as going through United Way, which could be similar.
Yeah, my understanding with Colorado Gives and United Way, those are separate nonprofits. And so that was the concern or issue where the reason that those could not be accepted is because that is a nonprofit entity that's accepting that donation. So if it's just a platform that funnels the funds, but it's not an actual organization, if it's just a software, device to get those donations with a workplace giving program, I believe that's separate, but I will double check.
Brianne, I think you may have answered this question with what you just said, but we use a software platform called Network for Good, which is how people can donate through our Facebook page and online, and just want to make sure that that's still, they're able to get those tax credits.
Okay, I'll double check. I will say that if there is any kind of fee, processing fee, like credit card fee or anything like that, the amount that it goes towards the fee is not eligible for the tax credit because it doesn't go to your organization. Michael, I see your hand up.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I wondered if anybody on the call had a communication document to donors or others about kind of summarizing the tax credit landscape, because it's not just HCTC and even the ending of enterprise zone tax credits. That seems pretty straightforward, but the child care tax credit, I think, and that, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, but I think the child care tax credit could potentially relate to some of the same programs that are getting approved for the HCTC. I'd be interested, Brianne, in your thoughts on that, and then also if anybody out there yet has a 1 or 2 pager that sort of explains this to their donors.
I'll just say we offer both childcare and homeless contribution tax credit to donors because of our different programming. So we've just kind of informed folks about, the homeless child, that's an option that basically kind of replaced DEZ, because childcare is 50% and you don't have to provide a social. I imagine we'll have a lot of folks just go ahead and opt over for childcare, and which is okay for us because we aren't right now close to our limit of overfunding that program. But at some point, if we have a lot of people make that decision, then we may have to look at putting some limits on offering that. But that's kind of how we're handling it.
Thanks. Do you know if there's a cap in terms of contributions or tax credits that can be issued by the nonprofit or taken by the donor under the child care tax credit?
I think that the amount of tax credits the donor can take are the same as HCT, 100,000 or whatever a year, and they can roll over. From my understanding is you just can't receive in revenue more than what your child care expense, your qualifying project expenses are.
Sure.
If that makes sense. That's the only, as far as how much you can receive, the maximums on that.
Okay. And child care tax credits, I think, is just capped, right? There's no in-kind. Is that no in-kind donations get the tax credit there? Yeah.
Yeah, stock and in-kind don't qualify for it. And that is one place where we are promoting homeless. The HCTC is for folks who are giving stock, because then that of course is eligible to them where the child care isn't.
Right. Thank you.
I have a quick question going back to qualifying gifts, and I feel, Brianne, I apologize that you did say this somewhere. Gifts from folks, QCDs qualify.
I'm sorry, QCDs.
Qualified charitable distributions, so it's coming out of their IRA accounts.
Yes, those do qualify.
Okay.
we had a comment, or a couple of comments in the chat about Salesforce. So that is planned to launch mid-March. And so, you know, I think it could make sense if you wait to communicate until that point. That could make sense. I haven't made concrete plans on when I'm going to be able to do that Salesforce training with you all, as for showing you a demo of how the interface will look and how it will work. That part is currently, we're about to start the final phase of testing. So I'm going to try to get clarification on when we can actually show you what the system will look like. But just to also make note, once that is launched, it's not going to be necessarily you log in and you can start putting in things right away. You'll have to update your profile and things like that. So it might take a few days for you to get up and running in that sense as well. But yeah, that's the timeline. I don't know if you had any other questions on communications for that, but yeah, I think it could make sense if you're an organization that you're wanting to communicate about that donor interface and want people to use that, then you'll possibly want to wait to see what that looks like and how that it's going to work. But yeah, I think that it's definitely a good thing to start thinking about how your organization is going to want to approach that.
I have a question. This is Stacy from Safe House Denver. Sorry, my video is showing my office at work and I'm at home, so I'm just going to have the blank screen. So just a clarification. So the email that you sent with the reminder for this meeting, you attached the visual on the submission process for getting the tax credit, but it was from assuming that we at the nonprofit are going to be handling the Social Security numbers. If we're planning on not doing that, and we're going to ask the donors to do that part themselves, do we have to wait until Salesforce is up and running? Is that a correct understanding?
Right. The current process does not have an option for donors to submit anything. Our current process is for only nonprofit submitting with a contribution form. So yes, that is correct. And I do appreciate that some of you are planning to use the donor interface. I just want to also reiterate that there are some donors that if they don't have a computer, you're still gonna have to get that social from them by some means, maybe a phone call or something. But just want to clarify that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Brenda asked for more clarity on issuing the certificate to the donor. So as of right now, like, because this is a process when Salesforce is launched, process now is an email, an encrypted email with the certificate attached to you as the organization as the donor and the donor, if the donor has an email. If not, then it's the nonprofit's responsibility to give that to the donor. Salesforce is actually not going to be emailing anything as an attachment, so it's going to be a little more secure in that way. For donors who have emails, they're going to get a link with a key to be able to access the PDF and download it directly to their computer. If they do not have an email, then you as the nonprofit will log in, access the document, download it, and you can then distribute to the donor, assuming by mail, which I know is not, does not feel the best sending a full social security number in the mail, but I think that's the only option that I know of that for those who don't have an email address. Dina, I see you have a hand up.
What is the timeline on receiving the certificates back from in the current form that we're using?
Currently, I'd like to do it once a week. We've been having some technical issues last week and I did not get any out last week. Our data manager has fixed that technical issue, and so I'm going to be able to start sending those out hopefully beginning this afternoon. So reality, hopefully once a week. It would be great if I could get them out more often than that, but we also have been working through some kinks in our current system as well. So if you have been waiting, I apologize, but we are working on it. It's not like the contributions have been lost out in anywhere. We have them, so we're working on it.
Okay, thanks.
I did have a couple questions directly to me over the past couple of weeks about how people are gathering the social security number. And so I did want to share a couple of tips that I got from a couple of nonprofits that I've been specifically calling donors to get that social instead of by request over mail. I think previously some people had mailing process where they had a form, a giving form, and had the personal information on there. Some people have now switched to gathering that information over the phone. One large organization even created a phone line where people could call in and leave a voicemail with their name and social security number. So that could then be put into the nonprofit's secure database at that point. Are there any other suggestions or questions about that? Since we have experts on the call right now, if you all have any suggestions on what's worked for you or what you plan on doing.
I just am becoming more familiar with the new data privacy laws that are going into effect in July, and haven't entirely figured out how that will affect us and us being a controller of private data like the socials. And I don't know what, it's not just the getting the number, but then that is in our database, and my understanding is like our contracts with any vendor who has any of our donor data, that has to be addressed. Any information you have on how that may or may not impact us would be great, because I'm still learning about all that.
Yes, for me, I would say I'm still learning as well. I know that our Salesforce database is going to be, the levels of encryption are good enough. I know there was another, I don't think they're on the call. There was an organization that I talked with, and they were doing something to their database to make it more secure. So I can try to find out what they had to do to kind of level up their security to be able to handle the social security numbers. So I can ask them, and I can include that in the notes for this meeting.
Yeah, and I guess it's just not just the holding of the data, but the agreements that we have to have with anyone that has access to the data, which in this case would be the state, that we would have to have some type of written contract or agreement saying, we both agree that we're only going to do these things and we'll abide by these laws, blah, blah, blah. And so again, I'm not entirely sure like what relationships that applies to. But, you know, we don't have any type of contract with you all with any of those statements. So wondering if that will need to happen as part of this.
That's a really good point. I actually thought about that this week with regard to the donor interface. So in that system, the donor is going to be giving their personal information directly to us as the state, but then that certificate is going to be available to you all. And technically in that situation, the donor gave their information to us, not to you. And so I thought about having that on the donor interface, that they're agreeing to share their information with you as the organization. But that's something I'm going to go to more other players at DOLA and find out, you know, as you say, if there's going to be a need for a more official paperwork and contract in place. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up.
I just quickly too, and sorry, I feel like I'm dominating here with lots of questions, but to go back to the Salesforce, if we are putting the responsibility on the donor to kind of request their certificate, is there a time frame in which they have to do that? I feel like a lot of them won't do it until they have to go file their taxes and they realize they don't have the form, or yeah, I guess is there a time frame in which they have to submit that?
So as of right now, we are planning on allowing people to even submit when they're filing taxes. I understand with the enterprise zone that does happen on an occasional basis. I would say that it's not encouraged. But if the organization hasn't met their limit, if the donor hasn't met their limit, then really we have that obligation to provide that tax credit to them if it's a qualifying donation. So yes, I have understood from the enterprise zone that that does happen on occasion, where it's into the next tax year when someone requests the tax credit. Michael, I see your hand up.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, just a question and comment. Liesl mentioned the data privacy law that was, I think, either going into effect or being amended in July. I wondered if that was federal or Colorado law. And then just in general, for some not-for-profits, including like ours, we really have not, even though we've been getting donations for 150 years, I don't think we kept a repository of social security numbers. And I know there are federal laws about data privacy, and if there's a data breach, there's a whole process for, you know, informing the people affected and lots of legal implications. But I wondered if, you know, if there's any sort of a Colorado equivalent that we have to be aware of. So I guess it's sort of a question for Liesl and Brianne for you too.
The one I was speaking of is a state law, and it only applies to organizations based on the number of records that you're working with. So it may or may, it does apply to nonprofits, but depending on how many records you regularly have, it may or may not apply to you. It does for us. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And I believe I saw, I think I've briefly glanced at that, so I can include the legislation number in the notes as well for those who want to take a look at that. So we have just a couple minutes left here. And there were some questions on gifts. So as far as when to enter them and when the certificate is issued. So yes, the certificate can be issued quarterly or annually. As of right now, not biannually. And if you as the organization prefer one or the other, that's who makes that decision. It's not based on donor. It's based on what you as the organization prefer on when to issue the certificates for all of your donors. So it's going to be a blanket decision. And we do ask for you to enter all the gifts at least quarterly. You can enter them more frequently than that, even if you opt for the annual certificate. The reason for that is so that there's not a backlog, so that we can just keep a timely record of the gifts and make sure that we're catching everything that has been submitted, that we're making sure we're not exceeding maximums and that type of thing. So that's a question on that. Tina asked, has anyone researched if QuickBooks could take information and meet privacy? I have not on my end. I'm not sure if anyone has thoughts on QuickBooks. And then Stacy, your question, will there be required proof of donation? Yes, for donations $5,000 or more. If so, what qualifies as proof? That list of having the frequently asked questions on our website. And just a note, you as a nonprofit will have to verify that donation. So just because someone submits it doesn't mean it's automatically approved. You will have to go in and look at it and make sure they actually donated the amount and to the project that they said they did. So I think this was a good conversation, and I did only schedule 30 minutes because I know people have a lot on their plate and just want to kind of take the temperature on some of these topics. I do appreciate the questions on privacy laws and how to make sure we're moving forward in the best way in that sense. So I'm gonna meet with someone at DOLA who has more knowledge on those topics, and that's going to be a talking point at a later date from us. But if you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to reach out. And yes, I agree, Jess, having that visual of Salesforce is going to clarify a lot for people. So yeah, as of right now, it's not available, but looking forward to show that in the future. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording at this time.
Brianne,
Yes.
can I ask a quick question? I started typing in, I did a lot of errors. So if we have 3 capital campaigns going at the same time, is the maximum of the 750,000 for each campaign or for a combined total?
For a combined total.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
You're welcome.